All right, welcome to Friday Morning Fuel. I'm Coach Mary. I'm going to be taking you through today's recipe. We are doing a garlic butter chicken with zucchini and corn. This is a one pot, 30-minute meal. Delicious. I already tested it out earlier this week, so really excited to make this for you guys. My first step is I've already preheated my cast iron pan for today to a medium heat level. And I've added 2 tablespoons of, avocado oil, but you can also use olive oil. So now that my heat and my oil are nice and hot, I'm gonna add my zucchini. So for the sake of the live feed for everyone, I have skipped a couple of the prep steps. So you won't see those on camera today. But what I have already prepped for you guys, and I did take a couple of shortcuts for this recipe. So I've already prepped my zucchini. I've cut it into just smaller shapes. We're gonna add it to the pan, cook for about 3 minutes in total, and I'm gonna flip it at one time during that 3-minute interval. So we're just trying to get a little bit of brown searing, but only cooking it long enough so that it doesn't get soggy. You could probably do other shapes if you like your zucchini in different shapes other than half moons. I find the half moons to be just a little bit easier in terms of the cooking and flipping process. And probably like most folks, the burners in my home are not exactly level, so if you notice that the oil is all on one side, don't worry, I'm gonna spin the pan around here in just a moment. All right, zucchini is in the pan. I'm gonna set my timer for 3 minutes. We're gonna flip once during that 3-minute interval. We're doing this one in a cast iron skillet today, but you could absolutely do it in any other large, high-sided skillet, especially when you're doing those one-pan meals, since a lot of ingredients tend to go into that recipe. All right, so this is 2 medium zucchinis worth here. Already cut, already sliced, we got a timer going. Our next step in the process, once we've cooked our zucchini down, we're gonna flip it once during this 3-minute time period, remove it from the pan, and then we're gonna throw our chicken into the pan to cook next. So our chicken is gonna be 1 pound of boneless, skinless chicken breast. A little bit leaner cut. You could absolutely do this with chicken thighs. Chicken thighs are a bit more flavorful but have a higher fat content, so you can choose accordingly what fits your nutritional needs and goals. All right, we've got about 2 minutes left. I'm gonna go ahead and flip our zucchini around. You may have noticed that the zucchini doesn't have any seasoning on it at this step in the recipe. That's totally fine because we are gonna add in our chicken. We're also gonna be cooking this together in a garlic butter sauce with lime and cilantro. So we'll get some flavor added in towards the end. Not sure if it really conveys on camera for you guys, but there is a lot of oil popping around. So obviously I want you guys to be able to see the cooking process, but if you were to make this at home, you could absolutely use a splatter guard. I have one off to the side, and it's just a fine stainless steel mesh that covers over your food, so it still allows air to escape for the cooking process, but prevents those large splatters from coming up everywhere. All right, my 3-minute timer is about to go off, but obviously I'm just now flipping it, so I'm gonna let this run for about another minute or so. Nice and brown. All right, we're gonna let this go for just another minute or so that the other side gets a little bit of browning on it as well. I've got my chicken off to the side, ready to go. I've already prepped that and seasoned it off camera for you guys. So our boneless, skinless chicken breast has already been seasoned with a combination of smoked paprika. I did a chipotle chili powder, but you could use any variation of chili powder, some salt and some pepper. And we will drop the recipe in both the caption for Instagram and into the show notes on Teams. So if I'm not calling out any specific measurements, don't worry, I'll get you those after the show. Let's go ahead and remove our zucchini. I'm just gonna put it back into the same bowl that we dumped it from. Pan's nice and hot. All right, so the next step says to add some additional oil. We are going to do that because we're gonna cook our chicken for 4 minutes on one side. We're gonna flip it over, add some garlic to it, and then cook it for another 2 minutes on that second side. So we just wanna make sure we have enough oil in the pan for the garlic when that comes around. All right, zucchini is going off to the side for the moment. We're gonna add in another tablespoon or 2 of avocado oil is what I'm using today. Avocado has a very nice neutral taste, and it works very well if you're doing any high heat cooking. We're cooking on a medium level today, so not necessarily high heat, but if you were doing any of your like stir fries or searing, this would be a good option. All right, we've added that oil to the pan. I'm gonna give it about 30 seconds or so to get warmed up. Like I said, our chicken breast, we're gonna let them sit in the pan undisturbed. We'll set our timer for 4 minutes. So I did test this recipe earlier this week, and originally I used a small package of chicken breast, which was a little bit more than 1 pound, almost 1 3/4 pounds. And I cooked the entire batch of chicken in that recipe. The only difference I really noticed is that for the sake of like time, it just took a little bit longer than 30 minutes. So you could absolutely do this with more than 1 pound of chicken and modify the recipe out. All right, so chicken is in the pan. We're gonna set this for 4 minutes. We're gonna let that sit undisturbed here. So while my chicken's going, there's a couple of things that I'm gonna go ahead and prep for our next few steps. Namely, I'm gonna prep our lime juice. So the recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh squeezed lime juice. So I'm gonna take my, I almost said lemon. I'm gonna take my lime here and gently using my palm and my wrist, I'm rolling and massaging my lime to help release some of that extra juices. You could also use like a juicer. I just don't have one, so this is the method that I like to use. All right, I'm also gonna use a fine mesh strainer to catch any like seeds or additional pulp. All right, got a good lime today. All right, so our recipe is garlic butter chicken with zucchini and corn. The original recipe calls for cooked corn, so taking the time to manually take the corn off of the cob after it's been cooked probably adds very good flavor depending on how you cook and season your corn. I'm going to do a shortcut today and just use canned corn for the sake of this episode. I used canned corn when I made this recipe as a test round earlier this week, came out just fine. All right, so I've got my lemon juice, lime juice prepared for when I need it. We've got about 2 minutes left on our chicken. Once our 2 minutes is up, we're gonna flip to the other side. We're also gonna add our garlic. So for this recipe, we're gonna be using 5 cloves of minced garlic. I like a nice strong garlic flavor, so I added an extra 6 cloves. If you wanted to, again, save some time in preparation for this recipe, a lot of these ingredients you can find already prepared in your grocery store. They make jars of pre-minced garlic in an oil, so those are nice, good option if you don't want to take the time to mince it yourself. Same thing with lemon juice, lime juice, those citrus juices, you can also find those prepared as well. So about 40 seconds left on our timer. All right, so flipping the chicken over to its second side. The chicken has already been cut into strips as well. If you wanted to shave additional time off of this recipe, it would be a little bit more expensive cost-wise, but you could also buy the pre-cut chicken tenderloins. So let's go ahead and flip these around. I'm also gonna rotate the pan again. This already smells so good. All right, and throwing in our garlic. So I am going to push this chicken around a little bit just to make room for the garlic to cook. All right, we're gonna let this go about another 90 seconds. So the chicken isn't gonna be fully cooked by this step. That's totally fine. This is just to get enough of that really good flavor to cook, a bit more aromatic. We'll be adding everything back into the pan together, and that's when it will all come to temperature. So for our next step, once this garlic has gotten very nice, very flavored and cooked and toasty in our pan, we're gonna be adding in our lime juice, and we're also gonna be adding in 2 tablespoons of butter, so starting to build the base of our sauce. When we do the sauce, we're gonna lower the temperature of the pan since we don't want things like our garlic to burn. All right, about another 30 seconds left. So to our pan now, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons or approximately 28 grams of butter. Also going to turn the heat down a little bit to low. So adding in our butter and our lime juice. Again, I'm going to just shuffle some things around in the pan. We're going to let the butter melt down. That's going to go for a few more minutes. So while this is cooking down, we're going to do our last 2 steps. Since I'm using canned corn today, I'm going to drain my corn and get that ready to add in for the last little bit. I'm also going to take our cilantro, chop up our cilantro. So the recipe calls for 1.5 cup of corn kernels, about 3 ears of corn on the cob's worth. All right, corn is off to the side and ready. The 1 can of corn, when drained and rinsed, is just shy of 1.5 cups. So depending on how much corn you like, or if you want a little bit less, you could do the corn on the cob, cut it off yourself, or you could go for 2 cans of corn. All right, and while that's going, let's go ahead and get our cilantro chopped. I've already rinsed my cilantro, so any herbs that you're using in cooking, you should always give them a good rinse beforehand. A lot of times, sand, sediment, any chemicals that the food may have been treated with, it's just a good idea to give it a rinse off. If you are somebody who doesn't enjoy the flavor of cilantro or just doesn't tolerate it, you could absolutely swap this out for a different herb. Parsley or basil would also be nice choices. Just gonna give this a rough chop. Our sauce is coming together nicely. So for our cilantro, we're going to divide this section that I've chopped up in half. We're going to add half of it into the veggie and chicken mixture. The other half we're going to use as garnish. And you could do the same again if you were going to swap out for basil or parsley. Add some into the mix and then use some for topping as well. All right, our sauce is looking pretty good. I'm gonna flip the chicken over, just kind of coat it in that sauce. All right, so the garlic is soft. Our chicken is now cooked through. So now let's bring it all together. So for our last bit, we're gonna add in our vegetables, give them some opportunity to come to temperature since our zucchini has definitely cooled off and our corn was already at room temperature being can packed. All right, so adding in our corn, adding our zucchini back into the mix. I'm gonna add another 2 tablespoons of butter to help coat these vegetables. All right, so we're gonna let this go maybe about 2 minutes or so. If you wanted, you could potentially remove the chicken, throw the vegetables back in, or throw the vegetables in and let them cook in the sauce and then bring it all back together. But, you know, for the ease of convenience and minimal number of dishes, we're just gonna go one pot. So I'm pushing everything around to mostly just coat everything in our sauce. Our sauce will thicken up as it gets cooler. I think this recipe would also be very nice if you cooked with cutting your chicken into smaller pieces rather than doing strips. But overall, a pretty good base recipe. Easily, you can modify some of these things. All right, I'm gonna let this go for another minute. The butter has melted. So once this next minute is up, we're gonna take this off of heat. I'm gonna put it onto a trivet, so taking it off of the stove top to start that cooling process. Once we take it off the trivet, we're gonna add in some additional, we're gonna take our cilantro, and then if you'd like, we could also add in more of our seasonings that we used for the chicken. So we could also use that same like smoked paprika, some salt and pepper. I'm definitely gonna go back in with some salt and pepper bare minimum, and then some chili powder. All right, so let's go ahead and remove our pan. I want to just slightly bump you guys up. All right, so we've taken that off. We're gonna add in, like I said, half of our cilantro. Half of our cilantro. Let's hit it again with a bit more salt and pepper. So for this finishing of the spices, you could just go by taste. You don't need the full amount like you needed to season for the chicken. All right, so just a little bit of salt. I know it looked like I went very heavy with that salt. I will just say that my particular salt grinder needs to be replaced, so not a lot of salt is actually coming out of it. All right. And this is pretty much the entire recipe from start to finish. So as you can see right now, it's pretty much just meat and some starchy vegetables. So depending on your eating style and dietary habits, this might be sufficient for you as is. You could also easily add in just a bit more carbohydrates. You could use things like potatoes or sweet potatoes, rice, quinoa. This might actually be really good over some noodles as well. Or if you're wanting to keep it more low carb, again, you could chop those chicken up into smaller pieces, serve it on lettuce wraps or like a low carb tortilla set, making it like some tacos. And that's gonna be it. This is our garlic butter chicken with zucchini and corn. all in about 25 minutes for the sake of this show. I will say that prepping the chicken and the zucchini probably adds another 10 minutes, so depending on how fast you are in the kitchen, you might finish this in under 30, but otherwise I would say a pretty solid recipe. I'll drop the recipe for you guys in the show notes and in our caption on Instagram. So thank you guys for tuning in. Happy Pride Month. Happy beginning of our summer season. And we look forward to next month where we'll be talking about some of the best protein bars that are on the market and how you can make your own at home. Thank you everyone, and we'll see you next month on Friday Morning Fuel.